All right, we are live. Aces Up, episode 50. High stakes fantasy football interview with legend David Hubbard. How's it going tonight, man? Appreciate you coming on. Shout out to Stevie G for helping me get you on here. Such a great dude. Love the support. How's it going, Dave?
It's going great tonight, Joe. How you doing?
Not bad, not bad. So you told me earlier, we were talking earlier, you had a friend of yours finish third in the Hard Rock Seminole Poker Tournament for a sweet six-figure cash, right? Is that what you mentioned? 250K?
Yes, you do. I spent the day sweating poker tournament. Yeah, one of my real good friends finished third, had a bunch of chips, and probably should have won it, but finished third is winning in that kind of tournament. So she had a great day, and it was a fun sweat.
Nice. What was the buy-in on that tournament?
It was a $5,300 Seminole Hard Rock main event down in Hollywood,
Nice.
Florida, Seminole Hard Rock Casino.
Yes, yep. Love it. This is a casino I've been meaning to get to. I've been talking to my buddy Steve D'Angelo about it. He's been twisting my arm to come down to Florida because that's where he's at. And you know, I tell him, I'm like, how far from Hard Rock Hollywood are you? Because I know I'm going to be dabbling in some poker games if I come down there. So this is a casino I'd love to get in a tournament. New England area, there's not many poker tournaments. Foxwoods kind of died down once the World Poker Tour stopped sponsoring that casino, and then the Encore Boston Harbor has the highest cash game break in the country. And they don't do any guarantee prize pool tournaments. The Monday night tournament's not bad. It's a $300 buy-in, usually gets about 200 entries. So you're putting in $300 to win. It's usually around 10, somewhere between 10 and 12K up top. So that's decent. That's about the best tournament you get around here. But you ain't getting like the Hard Rock, they do $1,000 tournaments with $1 million prize pools, 500,000 guaranteed prize pools, 3 multiple days, multiple flights. Those are the type of tournaments I like.
They run great tournaments there, and it's a great venue too. So it's really nice. I've been there many times.
I love the larger fields.
Sure.
You get more bang for your buck. I feel like there's more weaker opponents in the field, and it's easier to build a stack and navigate through if you get on the right starting table, and as the tables break, and it also helps that you run good. You know what I mean? You're not navigating through a tournament unless you dodge bullets and run well. So
yes, sir. It's very similar to fantasy football with the large prize pools. When people see that $1 million guarantee, the $1 million first place, they show up to play. Same with poker. Yeah. That's why the main event draws so many people every year. Everybody has a dream of winning $10 million. And this year, a 22-year-old kid did it. So that'll make more people dream, I think.
Nice. So I like to get, if somebody plays poker, I like to get, a little like 5 minutes is good. So you mentioned that you won a World Series poker circuit event. You want to tell us about that real quick before we jump into the fantasy football stuff?
Yeah, I played a lot of poker. I'm not on the level of these guys that play for a living, but I did bink a World Series of Poker circuit main event about 10 years ago. The World Series of Poker not only runs the Vegas event, but all over the country, they also run these, what they call circuit events.
Right.
And I won the main event in New Orleans, Louisiana, one year for $250,000. So it was a good main event. Got a World Series of Poker main event ring, which I gave to my younger daughter, and she loves the thing. So it was a great experience. And I have really, really close friends that are really, really good poker players. So they explained to me a lot of stuff of what I'm doing wrong because I'm nowhere near on their level. So,
right.
But mainly I just play no limit. Lonnie's a great no limit hole player. I think she's one of the best in the world for sure. And then her husband, Phil, who's also a real good friend of mine, he's more of a mixed game player. He plays all the mixed game events every year at the World Series of Poker. And he's actually won the 50K Players Championship a couple of years ago where they play all the different disciplines. And he won that thing against all those guys. So he has that on his resume. So they're a power couple. They're great. And they also love fantasy football. They played a lot of fantasy football with me over the years.
There's a lot of similarities between the two, for sure.
Sure, definitely.
Yeah. Nice. All right, so we got the poker out of the way. I want to jump into. I want to learn a little bit about your fantasy background because I mean, you don't do that many of these pods, so there's unless we're exclusively close to you or know you personally, I just got to know you within the past few weeks. You started supporting the show, which I appreciate.
Sure.
I'm shocked that you're the high level of high stakes players that support this show is I'm still baffling to me. I'm still sinking in where I was a year ago and where I am now. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, you're doing awesome. You're doing an awesome job. I like your show a lot.
Thank you. Appreciate that, man. So how were you introduced to fantasy football? When did you start playing? How long have you been playing? And if you can remember details about your first draft, you can share that too. If you want.
I've been playing about 25 years. Back in the day, they had what they called the World Championship of Fantasy Football called Wyckoff. And that's where I started the high stakes scene. And that company went bankrupt. Actually, they still owe me money to this day. I was listed in the bankruptcy filing. But so was a lot of other guys like Chad Schroeder. They owe him a lot of money. But that company went under, and then Dave Gerzak and Alex Karnowski were part of the Wyckoff. They were players there, and they broke off and formed their own company, the FFPC. And that's mainly where I was playing, and also the NFFC. I played a lot. But then Nelson Sosa and I partnered together for years, and then we quit partnering together, and I mainly did the FFPC because I didn't really compete against him in the NFFC, and he mainly did the NFFC. So that's kind of the history of it. It goes back 25 years. A funny story about that is I didn't even know Nelson at the time, and I had two teams in the main event, finished 6th and 10th overall, and he finished 2nd overall that year. So we've battled against each other for years too on top of that. And when we partnered together, our work ethic is very similar because when you do what we do at the level we do it on and the number of teams we do it on, there's very few guys that do that. And it takes a lot. People don't realize the work. Sounds fun, but when you start the season and start waivers for 500-600 redraft teams, it's not fun at all. It's a 15-hour day, 15-hour grind every day if you want to win to get there. So that's kind of where I started 25 years ago, actually. So I've been doing it a long time.
So you just jumped right into high stakes. You weren't a part of like a home league to start your fantasy football career.
Literally, I've always been competitive. I've always loved football, and literally the first year Wyckoff started up, I was there drafting the main event. And,
nice.
Ever since then, it's only gotten more and more and more. Like this year's a whole new level since I'm partnering with Steve. We're doing more teams than I've ever done in my life, and so it's going to be interesting. We're doing every main event. The FFWC merged with the NFFC for the people that don't know. And now they're basically one company, but they're still having two separate main events. And then FFPC does their own thing. They made everything work. They do best ball. They do main events. They do confined leagues. And that's the other thing. When I first met Steve, we were talking out in Vegas, and I was doing my thing. He was doing his thing. And I told him, hey, man, you don't want to just do tournaments. You want to get involved in confined leagues because tournaments have a lot of variance in them. You can draft perfect and still lose in the shootout. Where confined leagues, you're only trying to beat 11 people. And that's a lot different deal. It's kind of like a sit and go in poker. You've got to beat one table or you got to beat 5,000. It's a whole different game and a whole different strategy. And the return on your money in the confined leagues is a lot better over time. I mean, I've won a main event in fantasy football, but the odds of winning go way down when you're trying to beat all those people in a shootout where you're just competing against 11 dudes. And once you make the playoffs, you're only trying to beat 4 people for the money up top. So the combined leagues, you got to have X number. If you're doing a big portfolio in volume, you have to have X number of your dollars invested in combined leagues, in my personal opinion. And this year we're doing best ball at I think we have the biggest best ball portfolio in the world. Honestly, I really do this year. It's crazy the amount of best ball teams we're doing. And historically, I haven't been a best ball. Last year was the first year I ever got into best ball. Did fairly well, but I identified several mistakes. So hopefully this year, the results will be significantly better in the best ball portfolio. So what we have is we have a main event portfolio with main event tournament teams. We have a 350 portfolio, which is also a tournament like the main event, but it's a $350 entry point. And then we have, I want to say, 50 to 60 confined leagues with $5,000 entry or more in our portfolio. So we have a significant portfolio this year.
And that's just you and Steve. Is there anybody else?
Nelson's part of our team.
Nice. All right. So
100%.
it's all entries on all platforms. You guys are just combining everything together and going
Correct.
at it.
I
Nice.
joke and call Steve Big Dog. That's my nickname for him. But I also call him the CEO because he's a smart guy. He coordinates everything and he put us all together really. So any of our success will go directly to him because he's the guy with the brains. He put most of the whole thing together. So it's like a corporation almost the way he has the right attitude and mindset and mental fortitude to do what we need to do. So I'm looking forward to this year. I think it's going to be a massive success.
Yeah.
I have a lot of confidence in whatever I do, but football is that's my thing, and I take pride in it. And I look at different things and different ways to do things. When you watch a lot of people draft, just for me watching a lot of people, I've seen a lot of drafts, thousands and thousands of drafts, more than that probably. But at least this year alone, I've seen thousands and thousands of drafts. And people tend to that do some volume. They tend to get in a rut, and they build their teams the same way. They draft the same players. But if you're doing volume, you can't do that. You have to understand that you have to structure teams in many, many different ways. You have to get outside your comfort zone is what I call it. And even the really good players are guilty of that. They stick to their comfort zone, where if you're trying to build a massive portfolio, you got to be willing to build different structured teams and be open to other players that might emerge. I call it adjusting, and I think you have to adjust. Me and Steve started drafting in February, and now it's August, and we got a long ways to go. But during that whole period of drafting, I think the players that succeed and are really successful are best at adjusting the news, identifying flaws in their own drafting strategy, which I do weekly.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can admit when I'm wrong or when I think, hey, I'm not doing this right. This is not going to work with this team. But it helps. And sometimes you look at guys and say they shouldn't be doing that. Well, they might only be doing 3 drafts, so they don't look at this every day, 12 hours a day like I do. So they don't even know what they're doing wrong. They just continue on with what they're doing. So there is that. You're competing against guys that only have 1 or 2 bullets, and they don't look at it 12, 14 hours a day.
Right. I agree with that. I mean, there's going to be a combination that is the skeleton key. So you wanna have a ton of RB heavy builds. You want to have a ton of wide receiver heavy builds. You want to mix it up. You want to get that in NFC there's like a 3 wide receiver format. I think a running back at flex can work if you're hitting that running back in the mid rounds and not necessarily going 1, 2, 3 running back to start the draft. I think it's more optimal if you can hit that mid round running back to pair with the other 2 running backs that you chose, and you're still solid at wide receiver. I think that's the optimal. But my point is, you want to hit on all angles if you're doing hundreds of drafts. No doubt.
That's a very sharp take, and you said something there that should resonate with the listeners and anybody that wants to get better at drafting and take it serious and be a fantasy football, but it's a winning player. The format matters. I'd say this to Steve and Nelson every day because we're even guilty of it sometimes. I look at this team, I'm saying this team's not winning in this format because format matters. You got to look at what you're doing at each draft. Say you go to FFWC, you got an extra flex. So you got to adjust to that and structure your teams a little different. I'm not going to get into what exactly we do or why we do it, but then you go to NFFC, now FFWC, you go to NFC and they have quarterbacks at 6 points per TD pass. So you're obviously going to draft that a little different than you are at FFPC where it's 4 points per TD pass and they add a tight end premium to it. So you got to be cognizant of what structure you're drafting in. At the end of the year, you look, I said, man, this is a pretty good team. Why did it fail? Well, most likely why it failed is either 1, injuries, or you completely structured the team wrong for the format you were playing in. I think that's one of the biggest flaws that a lot of novice drafters make, are guys that only do 1 or 2 teams, whatever their budget is. I mean, I understand budget, and so that's a factor too with somebody making the decision. Okay, am I going to do 1 main event? Am I going to do 5 main events in a confined league? Am I just going to do a confined league? Literally, I would tell people that say they had a $5,000 budget, I would tell them to do confined leagues. I actually would not tell them. I would not advise them to do tournaments. Because tournaments, the variance in tournament, your chances of building your bankroll and being a building and then eventually you can get to the tournaments I think if you just did finally, you'd be better off long term to build your bankroll and then take your shot in the tournament structure.
Yeah, you'd be able to build your bankroll quicker, I think, because when you're drafting in tournaments, you're not necessarily drafting to win the league. Obviously, you want to win the league, but you're factoring in, upside and overall how it takes the draft to win it. You're being more risky. And you're adding more less stability and consistency to your rosters. You're going for the home run swing.
You can look at you'll be able to look at our confined leagues in 5 and 10 and 20, and even this year the 100K entry league will look a lot different than some of our tournament teams look.
Absolutely.
To be successful, they have to.
Positional advantage becomes more important in confined leagues for sure.
Guys will do different things to block you because they're only trying to beat you. They're not trying. It doesn't work. That's the other thing with tournaments. Guys try to take 3 or 4 quarterbacks. In tournaments, that's a bad decision because all you did is weaken your own roster. You didn't actually block anybody from winning an overall. You weakened your own roster in the long run because you lack maybe the running back you needed to put you over the top, or you lack the wide receiver that's on the come to roster a third running back so some other dude didn't get it. I could care less when I'm drafting. I look at what other people are doing, but I don't draft. I technically never drafted. I can honestly say I've never drafted against somebody because me drafting against them in that isolated 12-team league doesn't make a bit of difference in a main event tournament because the guy I blocked might get somebody off the waiver wire or whatever. So it ultimately ends up not mattering.
Yeah, I agree with that. You mentioned the 100K buy-in. I was going to ask you about this. This is the first ever buy-in this high this year. It's at the Circa. I believe you're partnering with Nelson and Steve, right?
I'm partnering with Nelson. I'm partnering with Nelson and Steve on every team I do this year. That's
nice. So who else is in this league? Like who are we looking at for opponents?
I don't have the whole list. I've heard that there's an actor in it, a poker player supposedly in it. I don't have the complete list of who all's in it. I know there'll be some high stakes grinders in there, like Chad Schroeder. I'm sure will be in there. Everybody knows that name. He grinds. That's what he does. So he'll be in there. But I don't know the rest of the. To be honest with you, I don't know who else is in the league currently.
Right. It's gonna be a like a soup, a mix of all kinds of people.
I think the guy that owns Circa got a waiver, and I think he is actually in the league. If I don't hold me to that, but I think that's true. You have to get a waiver from the gambling commission or something when you're in Vegas to participate in anything like that. And I think they granted it to him for this isolated fantasy football league. So I think he is drafting in the league with somebody.
Love it.
It's gonna be a unique experience because the biggest league so far in the history of fantasy is the 20K Platinum at the NFFC, which has been in existence. Don't hold me to. I think it's been in existence 11 years. I took a few years off of the NFC. I kind of regret it because I love their format, but it's been in existence 11 years, and I think I've played in it 8 years, and I've won it 3 times. So confined leagues, I have a history of doing well in confined leagues, so there is that.
Nice. All right, so I wanted to ask you what's your most cherished high stakes accomplishment, and like what win means the most to you?
I would have to say the main event at FFPC, winning the main event, because it's so hard to do, and the time you invest in this, it's like winning a big poker tournament. It's the same feeling. It's a euphoric feeling when you accomplish that. So I would have to say that. But it was a great team, and we drafted that year. I talk about structure. That team was structured. It was only out of the whole main event, there was only 2 other teams that had that players on that team the combination of players that we did on that team. And ultimately the team only had one wide receiver. We played 2 tight ends the whole year with 3 running backs in the FFPC. And we picked up Tyreek Hill with our last dollar in free agency in week 14. And that put us over the top. So the free agent budget matters even when you get down to your last dollar. I'm notorious for like overspending on players I want, which is I've tried to work and get better at that because I think that's a flaw in my game, obviously. But I think I'm really good when my money gets low at identifying players that nobody else is on. I get them for $1 and they're on my roster, and then they explode a couple of weeks later. So I don't know
you
if
gotta get ahead.
Sometimes I think I get better when I got less money, because I do tend to anybody who's played with me in leagues know I tend to overspend on money on the fab. That's one of my weaknesses for sure.
Well, yeah, the top waiver target isn't always going to be the one that works out, and sometimes when you don't have the money and you just completely ignore the top target because you know you're going to get outbidded no matter what, like there's no chance, you get creative with it and you start to comb the list, and like you said, you identify some of the potential breakouts, before they happen. And
sure. And the guy that won the main event, I think 2 years ago, FFPC, he got Joe Burrow off the waiver wire, and he had Jamar Chase. So you never know in these leagues. That's what I talk about, variance and outside your control. That's outside of your control if you're not in that league. But if the guy does a good job and somebody dropped him and it's not a drop that they overturn, then that dude did a good job. He had saved his money or whatever and identified the player in need to put his team over the top. And I think there's multiple instances that where like a quarterback got dropped that helped the team ultimately win I think it was last year, a guy got second and he had Kyler Murray and he got Trevor Lawrence off the waiver wire, and Trevor Lawrence went nuts in the shootout. So
yeah,
for people that don't know what the shootout is, it's a 3-week period at the end of the year where all the money's paid out.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So Trevor Lawrence. So in some leagues, Trevor Lawrence was available. I played. It wasn't a high stakes league. It was a different league. But I had quarterback issues, and I ended up scooping up Trevor Lawrence off the free agent.
Yeah, he had a little stretch there where he wasn't very good, and then in the shootout he just went absolutely insane.
Yeah, I think Liam Cohen finally got to him. I think he cleaned him up a little bit, got rid of some of his bad habits. The play calling got better. Parker Washington emerged, certainly helped him. He found his security blanket, and the guy, his most trusted target. So yeah, I mean, yeah. and he stayed healthy. He punched in his goal line carries. He ended up with 9 rushing touchdowns. So yeah, he definitely finished off strong. I mean, Trevor Lawrence.
Liam Cohen is like a good poker coach that looks at the player. The player's a really good player and can tell him, "Hey, these are your holes in your game," and they automatically get better once they identify what they were doing. So
yeah,
you need to be coaching in anything.
It reminds me of Bill Belichick. He always put you in a situation where it worked towards your strengths and it didn't expose your weaknesses as a player.
Yeah, he's a legend. Yeah,
those are the traits of a good head coach for sure. They put you in the best position for you to succeed. But all right, I want to jump into some draft strategy. You can tell me, I'm not going to share that with you if I get too invasive and you don't want to go in too in depth. But
no, it's fine. I'm going to do what I do anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I mean, talking about it and executing is against high level competition is a whole nother story too. Anyway, so that's kind of why I at first the poker player in me was like, I don't want to share my secrets and talk about my strategy and what I do. What if I'm the only one that's thinking of this? And then I realized I'm definitely not the only one that's coming up with this, and
sure.
And we're all wizards here. All the high stakes players that have skin in the game already kind of have an idea what you want to do, what the edges are, and everything. So,
sure.
but executing it is another thing. So, and plus there is a side of me that wants to make the good fantasy player great. And realize what they can do to get better and have good habits and kind of develop, like my buddy Joey Brown says, the high stakes mindset.
Yeah,
this really is a thing. If you're not 100% focused and willing to, like you said, admit flaws in your game, study draft boards after the fact, see what you could have done better, what you could have done different. Maybe next draft you make the build the build that you had. Maybe you nail it a little bit better and you find a better way, especially as the drafts go on. So yeah, but all right, let's get into the question. So I know you can win with multiple builds. It doesn't mean there's plenty of ways to build your team to be successful. But this year, 2026, what is your what do you think is the optimal build? And does it matter what side of the board you're on? Does that determine which build is best based on like what side of the board you're on, or is there a general build that you're leaning to, or are you just adapting to every draft and a couple rounds in, once you have your foundation and you're seeing what the teams around you are doing, you kind of have an idea at that point where you want to go, and you just take what the draft gives you? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
There's a couple of things with that. First of all, we talked about structure. You got to know where you're playing at. In the NFC, something might work better than it works at the FFPC. And FFWC, same thing. So first thing you got to do is to identify where you're drafting at. The second thing is if you're doing volume, there's a lot of different strategies that work. I know guys that do volume, and I'm a film guy. I got to, if I watch film and I see a guy that I don't like, it's hard for me to click that button. I might do it occasionally, but it's hard. Where some guys take the philosophy of they do volume and they just draft strictly off ADP. And they let the masses set the ADP, and then they come in August and they literally draft their team. If a guy falls below ADP, that's who they're taking, and they do that over and over again throughout the tournament. And the hopes is that you're going to ultimately develop a super team. There's positives to that strategy, and there's negative. The positive is it takes all your biases away, right? So if you have a personal bias on players, you're going to own that guy in your portfolio because your biases are gone. Now, the negative to that philosophy is the player's just not any good. And if you watch film and you study the player's strengths and weaknesses, you can tell he's not any good. So you're going to have, when you take that philosophy, you're going to have a lot of bust players on your roster. There's just no other ways around it. But you're going to have, your goal is hopefully 20% of your rosters, you have explosive teams with players you shouldn't have gotten because you beat ADP by a mile, right? So that's one strategy. Other strategy is but now that's kind of a strategy in the NFC. So you could go against that strategy and say I'm gonna do 2 running back teams, and I'm gonna identify receivers that I think are gonna outperform. And every year, if you look at the end of the year, which I do, and review what you did and review the players that hit or missed, you'll see guys that were way undervalued, and you wonder how this guy won. Well, he won because he got guys that were way undervalued, and he put them on the team with the right running backs or the right quarterback. So, and in structure, quarterbacks matter less, like I talked about earlier, in some structures, and they matter a lot more in other structures. I watched Chris Vaccaro in this pod today, and he made a good point that in the NFFC, you pass in a quarterback, right, that's is elite for a guy that might not even play snaps. So sometimes you can look at the drafts and say, man, those are obvious mistakes in that structure, and you got to get better at that if you want to succeed.
Right. So quarterback and tight end strategy, now that you mentioned quarterback, this year in particular, I noticed more double tapping in the mid rounds for both positions. Is this something that you've been doing, or do you think there's still an edge to be had on landing an early quarterback and an early tight end?
There's definitely an edge in 6 points per TD, landing the right quarterback, 100%. And in FFPC, you got to have tight ends almost. You can look at every team that's won pretty much, and they might have took a tight end a little later, but they identified the right tight end, because tight end matters way more in the FFPC than it matters in the NFFC, which makes perfect sense when you're dealing with a premium tight end format. So if you identify, you can take early tight end, and if they bust, then you're going to be hurting, but you can also work to identify the right pocket of tight ends to take in that format and also be successful.
Okay. Thoughts on a true zero RB strategy, and if you do go a true zero RB, like what does it take to make it all like clash and work properly? Like, because I know some people try to do zero RB and then they don't stay disciplined. That's another thing I want to talk about, but we'll tackle the zero RB first. Like, what does it take to make zero RB work?
It takes that you're making the strength of your team the wide receiver most likely in a zero running back build. FFPC, you could argue that you're going to make your zero running back build is filled with tight ends and elite quarterback, and you're punting wide receiver. But if we're talking about the NFC format, the true zero running back team is going to start with wide receivers. You have to be right on those wide receivers. You can do a zero running back team, and if you're not right on the receivers you took, it doesn't matter. But if you do pull off the zero running back strategy with the wide receivers that wind up being in, you got 4 top 10 wide receivers on one team, then you just got to make sure you're strong you can't be weak but at one position, and you hope that one position where you're weak at, you identify the player that's going to outperform. That's what comes down to in zero running back. You can do zero. I do tons and tons of. Steven will get mad at me sometimes. We've had healthy discussions because I like zero running back this year a lot, and sometimes they don't like it as much. But there's multiple ways to attack these formats. You can be successful in many variety of ways. You don't have to say I'm strictly a zero running back build drafter, or I'm a strictly robust running back build drafter. You can win, and I have one with many, many different structures. You can look at the team that finished second in the FFPC main event last year, and his team, he had one running back on that team that mattered. I don't know what he did on the waiver wire because I couldn't see his waiver wire, but on the actual draft he had one running back on that team that mattered. And then he hit the tight end and he hit the wide receivers, and then he ran hot in the shootout. So there's a variety of ways to be a winner. People get caught up and they'll say, "Oh, that team's so ugly," but maybe it's not if you really look at what the guy actually did with the team. So.
Yeah, I one thing I do with my zero RB builds is I'll try to take a guy that I can plug at least one running back I can plug in and get a decent floor. Some examples that come to mind would be like J.K. Dobbins or Tony Pollard. Guys that you're not necessarily confident in full season long. Maybe they got a young rookie behind them. Maybe there's a pass catching back that they're limited in their role, or they have an injury history. But the rest of your running back room, you want to have high end, high contingency upside, handcuffs and perhaps standalone value, but like a Blake Corum or Kyle Manangai, these guys that if an injury would have happened, or if they did get an opportunity to have more than a 40 or a 50% volume share, for their team, and they get increased opportunity, they hit. So those are some of the running backs I would target as well with the zero.
I call that the comfortable way of doing the comfort level drafting zero running back. Sometimes you have to get outside your comfort zone and not take a running back to around 13. That's the not so comfortable way, and you panic. But there's several ways to put it together, and I tend to lean towards the high, especially in tournaments. We're talking strictly tournaments here. I tend to lean into the higher variance builds in a big tournament. The team's either going to win or it's going to lose. There's no in between. The team's not finishing fourth or third. It's either going to win or it's going to lose. Period. So that's the way I tend to lean into, and that's what I'm telling Steve and them. I think you should have, if you're doing a big portfolio, you should have X number of percentage of those, X number of percentage of what I call vanilla drafts, and X percentage of other types of builds. So you don't want all your portfolio to be zero running back, or you don't want all your portfolio to be robust running back. You want a mixture of different structures and builds.
Yeah, because in the event, because one of them is going to be one of them's going to hit and be the skeleton key, and if you do lean into one and you hit, I guess it pays off, but it's the chances of it hitting all the way through is probably pretty slim, and then when it goes wrong, your whole portfolio is kind of smothered.
The other factors with these teams last year, everybody thought you needed a robust running back to win, right? I had a 350 team that I think was the best team I ever drafted, and I what I call punted the lineup. That's the other factor. You set your lineup in the shootout. You can have the best team, but if you didn't set their lineup right, it doesn't matter. The team, I made 2 lineup decisions, which cost $1 million. I finished 18th. I made 2 lineup calls that cost me $1 million. If I win the tournament by 60 points, if I click the other 2 buttons. And looking back on those lineup decisions, they were really bad. So literally I punted off $1 million with that team. But that team, the funny thing about that team is last year everybody said you need a robust running back to win, right? Well, that team, I didn't take a running back till round 12 on that team. And it was by far the best team in the tournament, but didn't win the money. But
I feel like those teams, if you do it right, they have the highest upside.
They have a very high ceiling, and they have a very high floor. They can either crash and burn or be really good. So, and a lot of people can't stomach that variance, but I like variance. So.
Yeah, that goes back to the similarities between poker and fantasy football. When you enter a poker tournament, it's not about surviving; it's about gathering chips and taking early shots at opportunities to make that happen.
And poker's similar to fantasy football. You can play poker perfect and still lose. I mean, you can play the hand. You can play the hand perfect and you can still lose. You can have bad variance in anything.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. You embrace the variance, you embrace the risk and the reward factor, and that's what makes you successful. It's kind of a necessity, like you said. If you're doing high volume, it's almost a necessity.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. All right. So I mentioned discipline earlier. I want you to touch on what it means to be disciplined during a draft. Explain to the audience what it means when it comes to executing your roster construction properly. You can give an example to help out.
For me, if I was a guy doing 3 or 4 main events, say, I would really wait and spend time studying boards and develop a plan. A lot of people just go in and draft and click buttons, and literally that's what they do. They go in and click buttons. You got to study some boards, understand the format you're in, and then make good decisions in the draft. Don't panic on the clock and take a player. I even watch some of these streams. You watch some of these streams these guys do, and there'll be 5 of them, right? Very good, talented guys, smart guys, no doubt about that. But they will talk about, they're on the clock, and they talk about 5 different players, and then they take somebody totally different than what they talked about, other 5 players. Seen it happen many, many times. So that's not staying disciplined. That's just guessing or whatever. So you want to know your plan of action, and you want to try to execute it. Now, things happen in drafts that make you, if you don't do a lot of drafts, you say, damn, that guy sniped me. Well, ultimately, you're never sniped in a draft, in my opinion, because there's always 3 or 4 guys that could work at that, whatever draft pick you're at. You just got to be ready for those things to happen and be able to pivot or adjust and take the right guy for your team. And that's the same thing with throughout the drafting season. Say you're going to draft 10 teams, and you say, okay, I'm going to draft teams in May, July, August, September. I'm going to go to Vegas and do a main event. You got to be able to adjust throughout that whole drafting period. I mean, you can go back and look at my big board teams, and they look totally different than the teams I'm drafting in best ball right now, because things happen throughout the drafting season, and you have to stay on top of the news, and you have to stay on top of the things you need to adjust to, or you're never going to be successful long term. You might get lucky and make a tournament or have one good team, but to be a consistent winner, I think you need to prepare, and then you need to execute, and you got to be able to adjust throughout the drafting season, in the draft, and even before you enter the draft.
Nice. So you touching on some of the things that you just mentioned, like adjusting to the news and kind of like the draft landscape as draft season goes on. Brings me to the ADP discussion. Obviously, we're not married to ADP. We're not going to say, oh, I have to take this guy here because he goes around here. I want to know what ADP does for you, how you study it. Do you like for me, I use it as a map, I guess, for when I map out my plan. Like once I find out my spot where I'm drafting, I'll go in and I'll take a look at like the last 10, 15 drafts and kind of see where players are going. And, I kind of use it to determine, when I'm going to push a guy up if I think he's not going to come back to me, or kind of map out a couple of different optimal roster constructions based on my side of the board and kind of where the ADP is landing. I mean, are you any different? Do you have any thoughts on that? Or?
I think the first thing you have to do as a drafter is define what ADP actually is. ADP is actually a group of guys that drafted. That they take a group of drafts, and that group of guys drafted players, and they set the ADP. Some people say it's sharp. Some people say it's real bad. I say it's somewhere in between that. So the cool kids in best ball talk about scrolling down, right? So what they mean by that is that they're willing to go outside the ADP and scroll down to a player that doesn't go there. And I don't even know if they really know what they're doing, but what they're doing when they do that really is they're creating teams that might not be many of those type of teams in that tournament. Like they're not willing to pair those players together, so they get a unique combo. So if the guy they scroll down to beat ADP is a guy that outperforms his ADP, and in the back end of the draft he's paired with the same guy over and over and over again, hundreds of drafts. Because on some of these sites, 95% of the drafters follow ADP to a T. You can watch the draft; they'll click the top guy on the queue 100% of the time. So that creates a lot of teams in that tournament that have the same combo of players. Now, that doesn't mean they might be right on those players, right? But you get to the shootout where all the money's paid out and those players underperform, what's going to happen to your team? You're not going to make the big money. So there's a lot of strategy to what I call unique combinations in tournaments where you pair guys that are very low owned. And if you're right, you're going to have a nice advantage. So that's one strategy that I use quite often is
I like
I will
that.
pair players
I
together
like
that other teams don't have. But ADP is nothing more than the early drafters. They accumulate that data. All these sites accumulate that data, and that's set. Like Jahmyr Gibbs goes 1 overall almost every time. Is it right? Probably is. Bijan Robinson goes 2 overall. But when you get further and further into the ADP, there's going to be a ton of things that are wrong with ADP. So really good players, I think, understand that and adjust to that. And that's why sometimes the guy that has zero biases can be successful for many years because he doesn't have a bias on a player and he's just going to take who fell way past where they should have went or what the masses are saying is optimal, which, as we know, the masses are rarely writing anything, betting, poke, anything. So.
Right. Yeah, no, that's the whole edge is trying to figure out where the consensus is wrong and exploiting it to your advantage. That's how you end up landing guys that beat out their ADP and return value and kind of make you a super team because you go ahead.
Just like last year, I'll give you an example. Me and Big Dog did the 20K. It's really the only draft we did together all year, and we did the 20K together. And in that draft, we got Puka in the mid-second. He never went there all year, but in the 20K league, he went there. We got A.J. Brown in the late 4th. He didn't go in the late 4th all year, but in the 20K league. So it doesn't matter the amount of money that's put up. Different stuff happens in different drafts for whatever reason. Maybe a little negative news affects it. Maybe a guy scared that the guy's injured. Chris Olave is a good player from last year. He went way later than what he should have been. So you got to find
round. Yeah, he was in the 6th round.
To scroll down to Chris Olave and put him with a team that other people don't pair him with. You got a huge advantage. I mean, you could take Chris Olave in the 4th round, even though he went in the 6th or 7th. But if you put him on the front end of the draft where he didn't go, then you could have a huge advantage there. But there's examples of that type of player every year, as long as we've been playing this game.
So when you push guys up in ADP, like say for example, Parker Washington, he's been going like 6th, 7th round. All of a sudden, he's getting steam up to the 4th and 5th round. At that point, do you think that is there a clear disadvantage to taking him in the 4th round, knowing other teams in the tournament have him in the 7th round? Like how can you navigate around that? Like you just mentioned, sometimes pushing up gives you a unique build, and that's what it takes to you got a contrarian build to the consensus best team, I guess we'll say, with that player at its latest ADP. So, like, how would you navigate around taking a player a couple rounds later, knowing that there's teams out there that got him 3-4 rounds later?
You can definitely compete taking a guy. I don't like to make a habit of chasing a guy up a board, but you can definitely compete with a guy that took him in the 7th and you take him in the 4th. If you're just, your draft's just way better than that guy. Just because he got him in the 7th doesn't mean he's right the first 6 rounds of the draft. So if you took him in the 4th, you got to be right more than he is, but that happens a lot. So yes, you can do it. Would I advise you doing it regularly if you're doing 1 or 2 teams? No, I wouldn't. But if you're doing 100 teams or 50 teams, sure. You can take him a few times in the fourth round with a different combination of players, and it's not going to hurt you. You could still win in the end, because what happens in the end, the field gets a lot smaller, right? So those combinations, whether you took him in the fourth or seventh, might not matter near as much if you get into a shootout with, depending on what size your shootout is, 300, 1,000, even 1,000 teams. You're competing with a lot less teams than you were when the season started.
I like that. That's an awesome point. I should have thought of that, but that's where the field gets smaller and maybe you're not sharing.
It matters a lot less. Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that. So I want to get into a little bit about drafting in the FFPC format. So for me, I've been predominantly NFFC. I've dabbled a little bit in FFPC a couple of years ago, 2021, 2022. For me, it's a little difficult. Even the small volume, I'm doing maybe 10 to 20 teams altogether.
Are you doing these teams in the 350 tournament or
the 350?
Okay.
But my point is, doing both platforms, I noticed right away the 2 years that I was doing both platforms that my overall performance, my team management, just trying to juggle the two formats, it didn't work for me. And I feel like I'm a better drafter in the NFFC because that's the format that I'm more used to. I've kind of mastered it. Like you said, there's different ways to draft it in either format. So I got you're an FFPC specialist. You said when you partnered with Nelson, you did most of the FFPCs. Nelson did the NFFCs. So I'm here to basically get some advice on you on how to tackle the FFPC format. Where there's 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, and 2 flexes. I'm under the assumption that wide receivers tend to fall a little bit, especially with the tight end premium. Because you get the tight end premium, so tight ends get pushed up. Tight ends that are going in the 7th and 8th round in the NFFC are pushed up into the top 5, 6 rounds in the FFPC. And in the elite tier, going in the 2nd and 3rd, they're going in the 1st round or like at the 1-2 turn. So I guess from a roster construction perspective, how should I be approaching the FFPC compared to the NFFC?
First of all, I think it's a tough ask to do, like bounce back and forth between structures because if you're not drafting every day, mistakes are going to be made. Whether you're telling yourself they're not, they're going to be made because structure matters. And the FFPC is a totally different animal than the NFFC because in FFPC, I love the FFPC. You could structure your teams like the infinite number of ways and have success. Where I don't think that's true in the NFFC. I think you got like 2 options in the NFC to be successful. And I've had success in both contests, won a lot of money in both contests. But the FFPC offers way more roster flexibility than the other formats, in my personal opinion. Because you can do a lot of different things. Like you can't really take 2 tight ends early in the NFC consistently. You might bink it one time, but if you're doing that consistently, you're going to be a losing player. But FFPC, you can do it all day because if you're right on those 2 tight ends, then you're going to have an advantage. You can build them with 4 wide receivers. You can build them with 4 running backs. You can build them with 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers. There's so many different ways to build successful rosters in FFPC. So I think FFPC allows you to build more unique teams. I love all 3 formats actually this year. I really like all 3, and they're all 3 completely different. So if you're just starting out and you're trying to do both formats, I would advise 1 year just stick to one format, master that, and then move to a different format. But when you're bouncing back and forth, so you got 10 teams in each, it's very, very tough.
It is. I know that. I noticed.
You'll lose your way quickly.
I noticed. I definitely struggled those two particular years overall. That's just one thing. I like you said, tackle one format, and then once you want to try something new, maybe you get bored, or maybe you end up you eventually win an overall, or you're satisfied. Maybe you want to completely switch over and try to tackle something new. That might be something
I don't want to cost any of these
down the road.
I don't want to cost any of these companies business. I'm just saying that from a standpoint that
I
absolutely
absolutely
one format and and master that, and then branch out once you understand what you're doing in that format, because every format is definitely different. And I don't like to go into anything saying I'm hoping I get lucky. You got to make your own luck in life in anything you're doing. So the people that are you call lucky probably aren't lucky. They just make their own luck, majority of them. So they understand
absolutely.
what they're doing, and they make their own luck.
The luck happens when you allow yourself to become lucky. I 100% believe in that, for sure. Preparation, hard work, and I believe in good karma too. Like you mentioned
now,
earlier.
I wear my live lucky hat, but I do that for good karma only.
You mentioned your friend, your friend Lonnie there that won the 3rd place prize, and you said that she's an even better person than a poker player, and
100%.
That definitely factors in, man. When you do good, run good, right? That's what I texted you, right? Good, run good. That's one thing I've it's one of my sayings, actually. I say that.
I like that. I like that saying. Saying.
So it kind of goes back to the like the Scott Fish Bowl charity fantasy football tournament. He says, "You be a good person." Their motto is "Be a good person, and the rest will follow." It's kind of similar. Good, run, be good, run good, or do good, run good.
He kind of defines that concept. What an awesome dude he is. Yeah. I don't even know him, but yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, he's awesome, dude. That whole thing is great. I've been a part of it for this is my 4th year. I do the live events in Boston. We raise a ton of money. We have a good time drafting. It's all for fun.
Yes, sir.
Crazy scoring system every year. That's another thing I like about it. It's a nice break from the high stakes world, the high stakes grind. You get to have fun at a live draft.
He creates variance in that contest. You might not even know what he's doing, but he definitely creates variance in that contest.
Oh, he knows what he's doing. His main goal is to keep us on our toes and to make the scoring narrow the even the playing field, to make it so that the really good players don't have a huge advantage over the novices. So I have fun with it. I think it's really
that's
cool,
awesome. So. Yeah, it's an awesome tournament.
But yeah, we got Steve D'Angelo. He says FFWC you can have 5 wide receivers. Absolutely, because you get that second flex.
The FFWC this year is a very fun contest. And I got away from there for a little. I'm having a lot of fun over there. That's a great contest. I highly recommend that structure. I think joining with NFFC is only going to help them long term. I think that's really a smart decision on their part, because NFC's run with good management. Greg's about as good a dude as you could ever run across, and so they do an awesome job. So I think them joining forces is really going to help both companies in the long term.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good for fantasy football. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the high stakes world is expanding, and it's with all these live streams, all these high stakes, the high stakes content is been more plentiful than I've ever seen it. You get perspectives all around high stakes drafts. I feel like it's growing for sure. I think we're doing a good job getting eyes on it. I
worry a little bit about market saturation, where so many best ball contests at those price points and all that, but it seems like they're still all trending pretty well.
James says it's just the beginning. I agree. My buddy Steve Fantasy Savvy's in the chat. Steve D'Angelo. We always joke. Someday we're gonna see it on TV, like the World Series of Poker.
Wyckoff tried all that before they went belly up, but yeah, they tried a lot. They had celebrity drafts. They had all kinds of stuff going on when they finally went belly up. But
look, we got the 100K Circa event this year. I'm sure that's going to be live streamed. And
that'll get your blood flowing there. That's going to be an awesome. I can't wait to play that one.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how you guys doing that. I think you guys are going to crush it. I mean, who the hell is going to compete with a trio like you guys?
We go into every draft with that mindset. You have to. If you lose confidence in what you're doing, whatever it is, then you're probably going to fail. But if your confidence level is high and you execute things the right way and and you look at the thing. The biggest thing I think is look internally at things you do wrong. Even in life, you can look at things you do wrong and try to improve. I try to improve every year.
Nice. I believe they are drafting from the pool. We got that question here. There's cabanas for every team. Steve G was telling me a little bit about it.
Yeah, we just got an email. They're going to have everybody's going to have their own cabana, and then they're going to put the board out on the big stadium screen, and so it's going to be a nice event.
Nice. Yeah. I hope they live stream. They have to live stream it.
I think they're definitely live streaming it. Yeah.
Nice. I'll be looking forward to that. Especially with if there's a diverse pool there, you guys are going to dominate. It's easier said than done, but come on now, you, Steve, Nelson, and if there's even one or two teams that are making mistakes, you guys are going to punish them for sure and capitalize.
Yeah, there's going to be so. I know there's going to be X number. There's going at least half the field's going to be like experienced high state grinders. That's what I call them. And there's a lot of good players out there. I compete against them every year, and they might do stuff differently than me, but they're still great players in their own right, and they still grind like nobody. So.
Nice. All right. So what are we at? We're at 9:30. So we got about another 5-10 minutes there. So
yeah, I told Joe that I got a main event going off in 30 minutes that I have to attend. So
absolutely, man. You don't want to piss off the CEO.
No, the CEO will put you on the bricks.
I joke all the time. If you piss the Stevie G, the Greek god, off, you end up in the Swiss Alps somewhere. Especially if you're fucking with his fantasy team. Yeah,
he's enjoying life right now over on vacation in Greece with his family. So he's having a good time.
He's been telling me about it. I've seen him posting pictures with his daughter on X. It's beautiful. Good stuff. Good stuff by Steve G, man. I'm glad him and I crossed bats, and that he supports the show, man. And he's been a big help, a really good friend for me. So shout out to Steve G, man. Definitely. He's awesome. So I don't know if you heard, tomorrow night it's only a $350 buy-in, but we are doing a tag team high stakes $350 draft. It's going to be live streamed on 5 different channels. Going to have 2 or 3 teams on each live stream, all very successful high stakes drafters. I know Nelson Souza's partner with Joey Brown.
Yeah, I heard about this. I didn't even make the cut. I don't know how to feel about that. I'm like the kid on I like the kid on the playground at recess. I didn't even get picked.
It's probably because we don't want you in there, Dave. we don't. No, that's good. Michael Edelman was left out too, oddly. He's an NFFC Hall of Fame legend. So I know Mike
well over the years. Yeah, he's a great dude.
He's a very, very good player too. Very, very good drafter. But yeah, so one thing we talked about was the last place team is going to be out next year. So we're going to be
nice, good cut. Yeah,
the last place team is out, and I believe Michael Edelman and it's probably going to be Edelman Jr. because his son is starting to get his feet wet in the high stakes world. He's pretty good, dude. He's pretty good. He had drafted against them last year.
He was on a stream the other night, and his son was texting him from upstairs saying, "Man, you're really putting this draft off." So his son gives him a hard critique.
But yeah. So who knows? Maybe Stevie G will ask you to be his partner next year.
I decline the invitation. I got didn't get picked this year. Don't come to me next year.
Oh, that's it. He's going the bitter route. Dave's bitter. That's it.
I'm bitter. I hope y'all have a good time. That should be fun.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We got the tag team, the guys who come up with the idea, Josh and Dan. I met them at the Fantasy Football Expo last year. They came up to me, and Aces Up was only going for a couple of months at that point. and they came up to me, introduced themselves. I recognized the name Dan Jewett. I've seen him in draft rooms. They had no idea who he was, though. They both, Dan Jewett and Josh Bowen, they introduced themselves to me. They told me they play in the NFFC high stakes. They've been watching my pods. I had Billy Waz on, Billy a couple of times, and they were like, "You're doing great stuff. Keep doing what you're doing." But we carried over, we stayed in communication, and I eventually got them on Aces Up, highlighted them. One of the things I like to do is give some of the unknown players a voice, kind of like Balky, like the way Eric Bachman does it for started it out. He
brings all kinds of people on.
Pioneer with that. I love that. I love to get to know the high stakes industry. Every single one of us are real good dudes. Give you the shirt off their back. They treat you like family. Everybody's a good role model. Gives great advice. They never let you forget what's most important in life, and it's been a breath of fresh air for me personally. You guys are keeping me my best version of myself, 100% focused. I feel like I'm real dialed in this year. The show kind of took off with getting support from a lot of the big names in the high stakes world. So I decided, I brought them on. They were like naturals. They were like way better than I was when I first started on the podcast. So I knew eventually, once they got enough reps, I was going to give them a show. I talked with Steve. I was like, Steve, I think we got to give Josh and Dan their own show. Let them run with it, man. And they have been doing a great job. They came up with their theme is their tag team high stakes partners for 6 or 7 years. So they want to show their process week in and week out, how they draft their teams, how they do their waivers, how they communicate with each other. And, and they came up with this tag team league and idea, and it's been a hit. Everybody's was in on it from the second they heard. Greg Ambrosius was a big backer of it. He set it all up for us and helped us promote it. Came on the show with Josh and Dan. It was their first guest, which was amazing. You get Greg Ambrosius as your first guest, 3 or 4 weeks into your show. So I just want to shout out those guys for doing that. Tomorrow night's going to be real fun. I'm looking forward to that. This draft means more to me than just another 350 trying to win an overall tournament. There's a bragging rights. They're getting actual tag team belts made for the winners.
Oh wow!
A lot of stakes on it. Last place team is losing. We got a lot of shit talking and going on already and breaking balls. It's been a great time. So I'm really looking forward to it. Josh says, "Stop it, Joe. I'm blushing, man." And my man Sunday morning went on Sirius XM with Doc Roto for a half an hour segment. And he absolutely slayed it. And I believe Dan's going on next week. So very proud of those guys and what they've been doing. So this is what it's all about, man. Proud of myself. I got to the point where I got a David Hubbard on Aces Up. So, no, honestly, man, it's really cool. It's brought a lot of joy, and like I said, great for the mental health, and it's got me dialed in. So I'm looking forward to 2026.
Very nice.
But yeah, Dave. So you got a draft. We're approaching the time I told you I was going to let you go. As many drafts as you do, I'm sure that you don't need to prep. But in my opinion, I think everybody needs 10, 15 minutes before a draft starts to do whatever you need to do. Use the bathroom, grab a snack, have a cigarette if you smoke, whatever it is you need to do to get out of the way, get yourself prepared for that draft. And like I said, we don't want to piss off Stevie G. So.
All right, brother. I appreciate it. It was very nice talking to you, Joe. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm glad you come on. This was a great conversation. Maybe we'll have you on again sometime in the future where you just say the word. I know you don't do too many. You don't do too many of these, so I'm not gonna. I
definitely don't do many of these, but we will come on once we win the 100K. We'll come on after we win the 100K.
Nice, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll be looking forward to that, and definitely for sure.
All right, brother. Have a great one, man, and good talking with you.
All right, man. I'll let you go, and then I'll say goodbye to my my audience. But
right.
Thank you for coming on, brother.
there. Yes, sir. Bye bye.
All right. All right, David Hubbard, everybody. This was a great show. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Like I said, tomorrow night we got me, Steve D'Angelo, Duke Viveros, Steve Shumway, and Dan Williamson has been added to our live stream tomorrow night at 9 p.m. High stakes draft, tag team draft. Other channels will be live streaming it. I know Doc Roto has got Billy and Willie, the 2 overall champs that are on the same team. Paul Spateri, Matt Modica on their channel. They're doing one. Nelson's doing one from FTN. So all those channels, you can check it out on YouTube. High Stakes Tag Team Draft, Wednesday night, tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Steve and I are picking from the 7 spot. Yeah, looking forward to it. Let's again appreciate everybody that's tuned in. If you tune in later on as well, appreciate you too. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. If you're not subscribed to the Sports Affiliation, we've been making great content. We have we have these new My Guy videos. They're one minute shorts on guys making their case for their flag plants for this year, why they're in on a guy and they can't stop drafting them. Checked out a few of them already today. Some of them are really good. I got to make a couple of them. I tried to do one earlier today on Kyle Pitts, but I didn't get it done in the first couple takes, so I decided to hit the pause button. We'll revisit it again, maybe after this show. Maybe I'll give it a go. But I'm not one that likes to sit there and go over and over with the takes. I feel like if I try a couple times and it doesn't work, I need a mental break from it. I'm not going to force it because then you keep making mistakes. But we'll give it a try again and see if we can get the 1 minute down without me stuttering my words or forgetting something that I want to say. So you can look forward to those My Guy videos. You can check them out on the Sports Affiliation YouTube channel. But that's it. That's it for tonight. Aces Up, episode 50 in the books. Had a legend, Dave Hubbard on. Appreciate everybody in the chat. I'm out of here. Everybody have a good night.